first of all, that companies increasingly need to recognize that just as land was the raw material of the agricultural age and iron was the raw material of the industrial age, data is the raw material of the information age. Data is the most precious asset that any corporation has. So having a big data strategy, having an analytics strategy inside your company is critical. That's thing one. Thing two is I think that there needs to be a real focus on integrating digital natives into your workforce. I didn't send or receive a single email when I was in college. I didn't own a mobile phone until I was 28 years old. But people who are 30 or younger, they're like fish in water when it comes to the effective use of these digital tools. And so I think that instead of making them wait decades to get a seat at sort of the grown-ups table inside your corporation, I think that you need to create space so that these young people have the opportunity to compete and succeed. And then the third thing is really a piece of defense. I think that cybersecurity and cyber defense is something that needs to be invested in robustly by an organization, regardless of whether it is consumer-facing, enterprise-facing. It just doesn't matter. The cyber domain and the potential loss of intellectual property, customer data there is only getting worse. In the same way in which 10, 15 years ago it became the norm to have somebody with audit expertise on your board of directors, so too do I think that if in 2, 3, or 4 years you don't have a cyber expert on your board of directors, then you're not being a good fiduciary. So I think those three things really stand out for me. I think a lot of the time the bureaucrats with their white shirts, red ties, and pinstripe suits like what I'm wearing right now, they try to control things that they ought not try to control. The 21st century is a terrible time to be a control freak. And those economic systems that are more pro-business, that are more open, that allow them, that see themselves as serving the entrepreneur rather than the entrepreneur serving the government and serving the bureaucrat, those are going to be the societies that compete and succeed in tomorrow's economy. I also think that a lot of regulation is a solution in search of a problem. I don't think things ought to be regulated where sort of the malignance of their product or service hasn't been proven out yet or borne out yet. And lastly, I think that a lot of the impulses in antitrust right now are wrong-headed. I find it pretty amusing, for example, that the EU has brought up an antitrust suit against Google. From my standpoint, antitrust really needs to be pointed at monopolistic enterprises. And for those who call Google a monopoly, I simply say, well, you can use Bing, or you can use any of a variety of other different search engines. So I think there's a problem, particularly in Europe. This is really a problem that exists dominantly in Europe, where there's regulation first and innovation second. You can't regulate or litigate your way to economic growth. You have to innovate. I think the financial institutions need to either nourish innovation inside their companies, or they're going to be wiped out by somebody else who views them as a competitor. So I think that the kind of disruption that's taking place as billions and billions of high-risk venture capital flow into financial technology, if you're a big financial services institution, you can do one of two things. You can view this as an opportunity to develop your own new, smart 21st century data platforms, even though that might be very painful and cost $1 billion, or you are going to lose a couple $1 billion in market cap as some 29-year-old starts a company that's a new competitor to you. I don't know if we should be scared of the rise of the robots. I think we need to be aware of the rise of the robots, principally because we need to think about what kind of labor is going to be most advantaged in tomorrow's workforce. Because as robots increasingly take over cognitive and non-routine functions, where in the past they've been entirely manual and non-cognitive, I think that we need to sort of rethink vocational education and other things that prepare people who may have limited skills for the workplace. We need to make sure that those limited skills are as targeted and as relevant tomorrow as possible.